All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Advocacy Strategies to Support After-School Programs. My name is Jen Dietrich, and I'm the Policy Manager at the Partnership for Children and Youth. We serve as the coordinating entity for the Save After School campaign. Before we review the agenda for our time together, I wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. There's no call-in line for this webinar, so please use the audio through your computer. All participant microphones are muted, so don't worry about that. If you have any logistical comments or questions during our webinar, for example, if you can no longer hear us or need us to speak up, please type them in the chat box that's located in the middle of the right sidebar. Please note that anything you type in that chat box will be viewed by all webinar participants. You'll have the opportunity to ask each of our presenters questions immediately after they speak, so please submit your questions as they come to mind in the Q&A box that's just below the chat box in the bottom right-hand corner. Our goal today is to share advocacy strategies to help you build support and investment in your after-school program. Many providers and LEAs can be apprehensive about advocacy, but the fact is that educating policymakers and building increased awareness about the value of our programs is essential to providing the best service to your students and community. There are many levels of advocacy, and the sum of our collective action is greater than what we can do as individuals. So today we're going to focus on the Save After School campaign, but these strategies are applicable to seeking change in federal policy as well as securing local funding. We're going to begin today with some quick background information on the growing financial pressure on after-school programs reliant on government funding. Then we will hear from our panelists, Gurna, Phillip, Vander, Klay, and Sheryl Davis. They will share tips to help raise awareness, garner support, and increase investment in your after-school program. And remember, we will have a few minutes after each presenter to answer your questions. So fill out the Q&A as we go. So let's get started. Back in 2006, Prop 49 went into effect to create the After-School Education and Safety Program, ACES, guaranteeing $550 million a year to support after-school programs in California. That sounds like a lot of money, right? Well, today, ACES supports over 4,000 elementary and middle schools, providing after-school and summer programs to more than 400,000 students 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. So that $550 million breaks down to about $7.50 per student per day. That $7.50 is less than a ticket to the movies, a matinee ticket in most parts of California. This graph shows what has happened since ACES was passed in 2006. The blue line is the state minimum wage. It was $6.75, and it's currently $10. That's a 48% increase. The state minimum wage will reach $15 in 2022, though some parts of California will reach $15 much sooner, or have already reached $15 due to local ordinances. The green line is the California Consumer Price Index. That has gone up 21% since 2006. And the red line, that's the ACES daily rate. It's remained flat at $7.50 per student per day. The stagnant ACES daily rate is not a new issue, but each year the problem continues to grow. ACES programs are being stretched to their breaking point. According to a poll by the Partnership for Children and Youth, most ACES programs surveyed in 2016 have already had to reduce enrichment activities, academic supports, staff hours, and/or staff training. And 29% said they are very likely to close their doors altogether within the next 2 years without an increase in state funding. The goal of the Safe After School campaign is to increase state funding for ACES programs to keep quality after-school programs open for the 400,000 students and their families that rely on them. The campaign is led by CA3, the California After School Advocacy Alliance, made up of 20 or so of the largest expanded learning providers and advocacy organizations in California, focused on enhancing the quality and accessibility of after-school programs. The Safe After School campaign is also not new, and it's much bigger than CA3. Last year, more than 2,000 individuals went on record in support of the campaign. Those included school districts, county offices of education, community-based organizations, teachers, law enforcement, and families from across the state. This year, Senator Connie Leyva has introduced a bill in Sacramento for an additional $99.2 million for ACES, to raise the ACES daily rate from $7.50 to $9. So that's about an extra 50 cents for the ACES daily rate for every $1 the state minimum wage has gone up. This bill, SB 78, will also provide future increases in ACES funding as the state minimum wage continues to increase. We are very grateful for Senator Leyva for introducing this bill. However, this bill will not pass unless we act. We need to advocate for our after-school programs. Advocacy may be unique or even feel strange, but now is the time to step up and push for positive change. So we want to take a minute to hear from you guys. You'll see that a poll has just popped up in the top right of the sidebar. So please take 30 seconds to record if you've ever done anything on this list. So just click that little box next to the ones that you. Every action on this list is some form of advocacy. You're an advocate every day. Every time you speak up for yourself or others, you're an advocate. With that in mind, let's hear from our speakers to learn some tips and key messages to effectively advocate for your after-school program. So first up, we have Eric Gurna. Eric is the president and CEO of LA's Best, an after-school enrichment program serving more than 25,000 kids at 193 elementary schools in Los Angeles area. Before LA's Best, Eric worked for Educators for Social Responsibility and the Harlem Children's Zone. He was also the founder, president, and CEO of Development Without Limits. So Eric, please kick us off.
Great, thanks, Jen. Can you hear me okay? I'll take that as a yes.
Yes,
okay,
so thank you.
Okay, good. It's always a little strange with these things, sort of. I feel like I'm speaking into the void, but I see all your names out there. So thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. I want to start by saying I really applaud what you said at the end there, Jen, that we are all advocates. And with that, I do not want to posit myself as an expert in this. I come from program implementation, staff development, curriculum, and when I came back to LA's Best after being gone from the organization for 15 years, it was really to focus on keeping our culture and values alive and our develop vibrant program partnerships and all of that. I didn't know that I was stepping into this political advocacy work that was so critical for not only LA's Best but the whole field across the state. Didn't know we were going to be in this financial situation that Jen just described, and really had to just jump in with both feet because ACES is so critical to the success of LA's Best and therefore so critical to our children and families. So what I can share is not really expertise, but what I can share is my experience over the last couple of years of having done that, having jumped in with both feet. Building support with local decision makers has been a really strong aspect of how LA's Best has contributed to the Save After School campaign. Not so much because there's local funding available for after school in LA, because for the most part there's not, but really because we feel like if we can sort of express and amplify the voice of leaders in LA that we can have influence on what happens in Sacramento. And so we've done that in a number of ways, through city council, through the school board, less so through the county board of supervisors, but I think there's real potential there. And so, you know, I have a sort of circumstantial advantage in some ways because my office is in City Hall, because we were founded by Mayor Bradley and we're this public-private partnership. But that doesn't mean that I'm, you know, in the room where it happens in City Hall. We have our offices here, but we're a separate nonprofit. We're not officially part of the city hierarchy in any way. And to be honest, when I got here, the relationships were, you know, light. They weren't bad, but we weren't getting calls from the mayor's office or city council to help them out, and we weren't able to get much support. And so the first thing that we did was just start meeting with everyone. And this seems obvious, but I've been surprised by how few people do just the sort of update meet and greet meetings with elected officials. So there's 15 LA City Council members, and it's grueling to have to schedule all those meetings. You have to be really, really persistent, and you know, keep following up and keep following up. Eventually, you get the meeting, and you know, it's really just a chance to develop those relationships and present to the elected official your footprint in their district, because oftentimes, you know, they don't even know how big after school is in their district. And so we put together just these little briefings that tell them, here's what it looks like in your district, here's how many ACES programs, here's how many of them are LA's best, here's how much state money or even federal money is coming into your district for after school, so that they really know what's at stake. And some of them, you know, just sort of nod and say thank you, and some of them become really interested and want to get more involved. I can't stress enough how important it is, the persistence in getting those meetings. And then, you know, from there we really looked for a champion. And so, you know, we knew that to make things happen in city council, it doesn't require the whole council championing you. It requires one city council member to really champion. And so, in our case, council member David Rue seemed really enthusiastic, and we had good relationships with his office. And he chairs the education committee. And so he really spearheaded things like getting a resolution passed by the city council in support of the state funding increase, or getting the decision makers you see in the photograph here together for the event that we had last year that really celebrated the city council's resolution and generated a lot of media. So just having that one champion really helped to bring out a lot of others. And part of that is it's somewhat transactional. You know, it's giving the elected positive publicity, doing the grunt work of media, and setting up events where they can just show up and they get a big bang for the buck. They get media hits. They get, you know, really good reflection on them for doing good things for kids in their council district, whether or not they're funding the program or not. It's oftentimes giving them a moment at the mic or in the spotlight. So Councilmember Rue and School Board President Steve Zimmer opened up our big annual fundraiser last year. And just sort of, you know, representing the partnership of the city and the school district, you know, we asked them to come. And, you know, part of that is to represent to our donors and supporters at the event that, you know, we have this credibility. But honestly, it was more of an engagement of those two individuals who are so critical. So it gives them a moment to be in front of those hundreds of people and have that credit. So, you know, other opportunities beyond just those big events, any little thing that we do at a school could potentially be a media event. So if we install a native garden, we can bring out elected officials and do the work to get some media out there. It does take the footwork of, you know, doing the press release and calling, you know, to try to get some TV cameras or even just the local community newspapers to show up and give them clippings. Local science fairs, local sports tournaments are all opportunities to bring out elected officials. Another critical aspect of engagement with local officials is really finding out from them what are their goals and priorities and figuring out ways that we can tie in with that we can support them, so that we're not just there asking, but we're there as a constituent and an organization who will support their goals when it's relevant, right? Because not all of their goals are going to be shared goals. But my experience is that there's always at least one where you can create a connection between what you're doing as a program and the goals of that elected official. Another tool that we've used is offering to enhance events or things that they're doing. So for example, the mayor's State of the City speech is coming up. And if everything works out, our LA's Best mariachi band is going to perform at his State of the City speech. Maybe it'll just be as people are walking in, or maybe it'll be from the stage. But hopefully that'll reflect well on the mayor, and it always warms an event up to have kids performing. And hopefully it'll also force him to mention LA's Best and after school in his talking points as he acknowledges those kids. But the behind the scenes of this is not that the mayor's office called me and said, could you have a group come out and perform? I've had to be super pushy offering this. We'd love to do this. This is a great opportunity for the kids. We think it'll really enhance the event. Following up until finally it's easier to say yes and make me go away than have to keep fielding my phone calls. So sometimes it's again just that persistence that can create those opportunities. Just in terms of the sort of technical resources that we've utilized to really galvanize support and utilizing those champions is getting the council or the school district board or whoever to pass a resolution. And I've learned that this is more than symbolic, because just in the last month, City Council here in LA and School Board passed resolutions in support of SB 78, our increase to the state funding. And I thought that it was real easy for them, once we had a champion who was willing to put that resolution forth, on before both bodies. We wrote the resolutions ourselves, and they revised them. But once we had that, it was easy for those bodies to pass those resolutions because there's no money. It's just them saying we support the state giving more money. So no skin off their backs, pass unanimously on both bodies. I thought it was just a good way to be able to say LA supports the state, supporting after school. But I've also learned that it actually creates the permission or the empowerment of the lobbyists of both the school district and the city to get on board with us. So now that we have those resolutions, and I was just in Sacramento yesterday with the Chamber of Commerce, and I met with both the city's lobbyist and the school district's lobbyist, and they're now putting us officially on the docket as things that they're supporting because they've been empowered by their bosses to do that. So those resolutions are really critical and not terribly hard to do. If every school board and city council in the state of California were to pass those resolutions and empower their lobbyists to get on this in Sacramento, I think it could be a real game changer. And those are possible things to do. I just mentioned the chamber, another local body to get involved with is the business community. The chamber in LA is known for being a progressive chamber, very involved with education. They do a lot of convenings around STEM education and things like that. We participate in those things. And we participate honestly because the content is good and it's a good opportunity to meet a lot of folks who are working in the field and supportive. But also the secondary result has turned out to be really beneficial, which is that we're now on the radar of the chamber so that they invited us to participate in their lobbying trip. And I said that we would participate if they would include our issue officially in their advocacy, which they agreed to do as part of their larger sort of focus on unintended consequences of the minimum wage. But I do think that we were on their radar because we participated in their events, but more than just going to the events, I make it a point to raise my hand and ask questions and to advocate for our cause at events like that, mostly just because it's an audience and I want to take a moment to get the message out. But I've also learned that it engages us with the convening body. And so it sort of puts us on their radar. And then when they have an opportunity and they need participation of local nonprofit leaders on their lobbying trip, they reached out to us. So it's being squeaky wheel. All across the way, the recurring theme here is being a zealot for this cause and being the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. So I guess I will wrap up by really advocating to you to not be hesitant to ask for things, to not be hesitant to ask for those meetings, to be at the table. You really do have to be aggressive, and it's possible to be aggressive in a cordial and polite way, but that we really have to, we owe it to our kids and to our staff to really put ourselves out there. When you see LA's best in the media, or when you see LA's best highlighted in some of this advocacy work or helping to lead the way in CA3, that's not because we're part of the in crowd and someone invited us. It's because I'm inviting myself into that conversation. And I don't love it. It feels pushy. I don't like being pushy. Despite how it might appear, it's not what feels like natural in my personality. But I do feel like it's a responsibility of this job to be pushy in that way. So I really just want to encourage you. None of these things I talked about doing, I don't think any of them are a result of us having an office in City Hall. I think that gives us a little bit of a push towards it, but I think everybody on this call can do any number or all of these things by just doing the work. Jen, I think that we want to have time for questions after each speaker, right? I don't know if anybody has any questions. We could take them now, or I'll let you sort of guide the way, Jen.
Thank you, Eric. Yes, if you guys have any questions for Eric at this point, please type them into the Q&A right now, and we can feed those to Eric. We have one question for you, Eric. How long does it take for school boards and city council to act? What's the timing on that?
It's varied a bit, but I would say that, excuse me, it takes a while because there's a fair amount of back and forth around like a resolution and stuff like that, just in drafting it, and the staffer who you're dealing with is juggling multiple priorities. So it can take a while just to get to the point where you have the resolution, even after there's goodwill on the part of the council member to introduce it or the school board member. And then they have to introduce it at one meeting and then pass it at the next meeting, there's often like a month in the interim. So I think that it's not too late now. We can still get this done during this advocacy process in Sacramento, but if you haven't initiated these processes, you've got to start right now to do it in order to have the resolutions passed in time for it to matter this year, because it does take a while.
Okay, great. We had one other question. If you were to get a resolution, how could we maximize the value? Who do we share it with?
So I think sharing it really widely locally is important so that people feel encouraged to sign on with their support. So once we had City Council, we also got an official letter of support from the mayor and an official letter of support from the Chief of Police. I think it's a lot easier for someone like a police chief to sign on once the mayor and the City Council have already signed on. They have total political cover at that point. So I think sharing it widely for those reasons, really making sure to identify the lobbyists and making sure that the lobbyist is aware that the reso was passed. They won't know it automatically. After school is never at the top of the list of priorities for lobbying, except with our own group. So, and I wouldn't count on anyone within the council or the district or whatever to make that connection to the lobbyists. So I think that one's really important. And then, the most basic one is sharing it with CA3, sharing it with you, Jen, so that you can coordinate and so that we can show the collective will across the state. I really think that if, every city had city council, school board, mayor, and police chief, if maybe even half a dozen cities that are represented on this call today could have these same things, it would be really different for any of us going up and having constituent meetings with senators and assembly members to show this isn't just your district, this is widespread support across the state. So I think that that's the best version of those resolutions. I will say that an official letter of support can be a quicker process. So if you if you can get that from someone like the mayor of your city or some other elected official like that, that can be just as effective for these purposes as the resolutions. And that could be a much quicker process. That can be just you draft it and you have someone who's on the mayor's team or whoever gets the signature and you're done.
Okay, great. We had some more questions come in, and we can hopefully have some time at the end, but we'll be able to share. We have some resources, templates, and that sort of thing in which you were talking about, Eric. So thank you so much. We will move on to our next presenter, Phillip Vander.
Hey.
Phillip is a senior legislative aide for Senator Connie Leyva, representing Ontario, Chino, Pomona, and parts of San Bernardino. He advises the senator on education and energy issues, and he's also a 2017 New Leaders Council Fellow. He's learning cutting-edge entrepreneurship, management, advocacy, and political management skills. So thank you for joining us today, Phillip, and I'll let you take over.
Thanks, Jen. I appreciate that introduction. So what Eric said was really spot on and awesome, and a lot of that is so similar to advocating for this issue and really any issue at the state level. And I want to say especially what Eric said really applies to district offices for senators and assembly members. And those might be the best, those are probably going to be the best places for you to reach out to is to go and, request a meeting. Let me pull up. To talk to senators and assembly members in their district offices and to reach out. And I think something that's really important to mention here is, and you can see the slides, is do legislators and staff actually care? We hear this so often as staff and just about the political sphere in general that they don't care what I say. They just do whatever they want to do, and they listen to lobbyists, and they don't listen to their constituents. And that, I think, really is so far from the truth, especially when you get a group of passionate constituents about speaking about a really good issue. We're talking about kids and after-school programs here. That's something that people can relate to. That's something that the staff member sees right away as important. Everyone thinks education is important, and so these members really care about what's affecting their districts and their constituents, because that's those are the people who got them into office in the first place. Every senator and assembly member likes to be able to say when they're on the Senate or the assembly floor, I'm supporting this because of my constituents, because of these effects that it's having on my constituents. And to get that across, I think it's so important to tell personal stories. I meet with hundreds of people every year, and by far the things that stick out to me the most are people who tell stories about why a bill or a policy or a budget proposal affects them. And I think one example is CSU students come in to meet with us every year. And so there's a certain day where I'll probably have a meeting with 10 different groups of CSU students from around the state. And the ones that try to just talk policy details with me about the bill are the ones that I forget most quickly, because I already know the policy. It's my job to know the policy. I've read about it. I understand what they're saying. I get that they want 167 million or whatever their ask is. Okay, I get it. The ones that stick in my head and the ones that stick in the memory of staff and legislators are the personal stories. I remember the stories of the student who moved to Humboldt to go to school there and wasn't able to find housing, and so was homeless for her first semester of school. I mean, that's a story that sticks with you. And so telling the personal stories and the personal effects is so important. And to say, my child is going to this program, and this is the benefit that she's gotten, or this is how I've seen her grow, or if this program goes away, I won't be able to pick her up from school and we're not sure what we're going to do. I might have to stop working. Those personal stories are so important. And so saying this is what's happening in the district, and as providers saying, here are the stories that we've heard, here's what we've seen, and if this funding doesn't happen, this all goes away in the district, and we have kids in your cities out on the streets. I mean, those real effects in the cities that the legislators know is really what's compelling. So getting a meeting. Best person to talk to is always going to be the scheduler. It's great if you see the member in passing and say, oh, hey, can we meet with you? They'll, I'm sure, say yes or contact my office, and then they'll probably forget as they move on to the 45th thing that they need to do that day. So talk to the scheduler. Often they like to talk. Yeah, go ahead. Schedulers often like emails. It's just easier in writing. Follow up. That's important. Often it'll take them more than a day or two, and schedulers will get annoyed if you follow up with them every day. But if you don't hear from them for a few days, it's good to just follow up with a phone call. And it's possible that they're just talking to the member and trying to get a response, and that can be difficult to get a response sometimes. If they say the member's schedule is really busy right now, either you can offer to talk to staff, or maybe they might offer to talk to staff. That's great. Again, the member is doing a ton of things, and if you talk to the staff, you're going to be able to get in there sooner. And that brings us to the next slide, which is that if you talk to the staff and the staff agrees with you and understands the issues and sees how it's affecting the constituents, they can become an advocate that's actually in the office. And the member will be moving from issue to issue, thing to thing, but the staff can come back and say, okay, but there's still this issue. We need to sign this letter. We need to be in support of this. And that's where I've seen things most valuable. Eric talked about having a champion on the council in local, and it's great to have champion legislators as well. Often champion legislators can start with champion staff. If you have a staff member who's bringing that perspective to the legislator in staff meetings, that can be so helpful. So definitely want to take the opportunity to meet with staff and then follow up with them as well. Who should be involved? Anyone with a personal story. Again, you don't have to talk out the policy. It's going to be the legislator's job and their staff's job to know that. But the stories is what's really going to be convincing. So anyone who has a story is great. When you're having a meeting with legislators or a staff, it's pretty simple. Introduce yourself, tell your story. Again, it's all about stories. How it affects you, or how it affects children, or how it affects the community. And then that's the majority of what you're talking about, and then you just go into the ask, and we want to keep it simple. One thing that's really great right now is Senator Leyva is circulating a budget letter asking for this money. And so the ask can be as simple as, would you please sign on to the budget letter that's supporting after-school funding, right? And I can even provide that, or I can make sure Jen has it, and we can get that out so that you can bring copies of it to the meetings, something really tangible and really simple. Because if you say, please give us $99 million, a legislator can say, well, the budget process, and it's tough, and we don't, we want to make it simple for them to say yes and hard for them to say no. And so we say, can you please sign this letter? A signature doesn't necessarily cost them anything, right? It's like Eric said with the resolution, but it builds that support. So that's very, very valuable. And then following up, again, every day, following up with staff, they're going to say, okay, I haven't had time to get a response. The member's busy, I haven't had time to talk to them. But politely following up every few days, once a week, so valuable, because staff also have a lot of things to do. And, it might slip through the cracks sometimes. And so politely following up again, hi, have you had a chance to talk to the senator about signing on to this letter? We'd really love to have their support. And just like Eric said, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so just being persistent with that, often we'll get the signature, and then communicating honestly with Jen or with myself, and I can follow up with their staff as well and say, hey, just checking in, and then they're hearing it from both sides. Something that I don't have on here, which I actually thought about earlier today, was writing letters. And so, you've had the meeting, you've talked with the staff, but writing a letter of support, and it can be, the kids writing a letter, parents writing a letter, the providers writing a letter of support saying, thank you for meeting with us, thank you for discussing this issue, we're in support of this bill, or we're in support of increased funding. And we have a template letter that we can send out for that as well. And that's the letter, again, once it gets to the boss, and if you share that with Jen, we can get it, it gets to the senators and then also to the governor, because he's part of this too. And then we kind of close the loop on the whole thing. So now they've not only met with you, they've talked to staff with you, their staff have talked with you about their ask, you've been persistent to get them on board, and now they've gotten a formal letter saying we're really supportive of this and this is so important for us. And so it kind of is a holistic wraparound advocacy tool. And that's it for me, and happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Phillip. You guys want to type in your questions to the Q&A box? Let's see. We do have one. Give me one second. What is the likelihood of SB 78 passing in the light of similar bills that haven't been signed by the governor? Are there different strategies that we're employing this time?
That's a really great question. I think that the key with SB 78 is that it's complementary to the budget ask. And so I'll use an example. There was a bill a couple years ago that was asking for career technical education funding. And the bill ended up stalling out, but they got the money in the budget. So once they got the money in the budget, there was no need for the bill. And so that's something that is kind of what we're doing with SB 78, is we're really pushing and supporting SB 78 to say this is a really big issue. But we're also working on the budget side so that we can actually get the money in the budget in June. And then SB 78 actually becomes unnecessary, and we're able to still get the increased funding. So it's really more of a tactical measure to build support for the issue and to make sure that it's on everyone's mind and agenda, and people have to vote for it in order to raise the profile of the budget ask. And in terms of getting that done, I guess more to the point of your question, we're just really trying to work on it on all sides. The Senate hasn't been as big of a proponent of the issue previously. It's mostly come out of the Assembly, and so this year we're trying to get it from both the Senate and the Assembly, and pushing the governor on it. So we're trying to kind of get the momentum moving on all sides.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Phillip. Now I'd like to introduce Sheryl Davis.
Hi.
Sheryl is the Executive Director of Human Rights Commission for San Francisco. She's previously served as Commissioner for 5 years, and prior to joining the Human Rights Commission, Sheryl was the Executive Director of Collective Impact, a community-based organization in San Francisco overseeing Mo Magic, Magic Zone, and the Ella Hill Hutch Community Center. So I will hand it over to you, Sheryl. Thank you for joining us.
Can everyone
try? There we go.
Okay.
Yes, I think so. Go ahead and get started. We'll let you know if there's
Okay.
any.
So I am going to talk a little bit. Thanks. I'm going to talk a little bit about engaging, how to motivate families to take action. Um, one of the things that we found over the years is that a lot of times
I think there might be an echo with your speaker. Might be getting a feedback. Can we try again?
Can you hear me now?
Thank you.
Oh, is that better? So,
yeah.
How to motivate families to take action. One of the things is we have to make sure that we remember all of our different stakeholders. The way that we talk to families is not the same as the way that we talk to legislators, other there is an issue that we've had with families is that they felt like a lot of times people are not able to.
Oh, Sheryl, it's kind of floating in and out. Maybe can you adjust your mic closer? Sorry.
Closer. That's okay. What about now?
Oh, there we go. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. Not a problem. So one of the things with families has been that they feel like they are often being used to keep programs afloat and that people aren't really interested in it. So we really try to make sure that from the beginning we make it about the kids. However we frame it, we make it about the kids and we make it about what their needs are, what the family's needs are, and we make it about advocacy. It can't be about advocating to get more funding for the program. You have to frame it about the children. You have to make it relevant. And money for the program, how does it benefit the family and the kids? What messages are effective for us? What we have been doing and trying to get them to understand is with regards to community members. When we talk about summer, they may or may not be interested in the academic achievement gap of the kids, but they are concerned about the public safety issues. They want to make sure that the neighborhood is going to be, that there's some benefit to them. The service learning component is important, being able to get an understanding of how kids are learning, but also to give back to the partnership with businesses, community members, and neighbors can understand the benefit for them to participate and be engaged about summer. For the businesses, it's always been important in the summer specifically to talk about it's good for business, right? The more that kids are engaged and the more that they have programming, the less that they're hanging out in front of places of business. And it also is a good job training opportunity. And that's what a lot of the programs are doing, but we need to talk about how we bring that. With families, we have been really trying to talk about it, not so much in terms of what the funding streams are, but the benefits of the funding streams. I'm seeing that it's still going in and out. I'm sorry about that. But about the quality of program, the themes, and the activities focusing on the opportunity of the activity. Ways that we have raised awareness. Raised awareness. Family workshops. But again, making it relevant. We don't call them family workshops. We maybe call them cooking demos, or we call them game nights or fun activities. We try to do something to help them want to come out and see it's beneficial. I think of it as just they're going to have to listen to some talking heads. Family outings, we do field trips, and again, use those all as opportunities to frame it and have conversation. Resource fairs and events in community. Jen, do you have any suggestions? I'm seeing people are still having a problem.
You're sounding a little bit clearer.
Okay.
Recently, yeah.
Okay. We have community newsletters, but we also try to do that in partnership and collaboration with partners. We don't make it just about any one program. We partner with the Boys and Girls Club, the YMCAs, the community centers, the school district programs in the neighborhood to make sure that there is one summer calendar, one resource guide. That has been something that the police have actually asked us for, because it was something that when they see kids or young people during the summer who have nowhere to go, it was great for them to have a resource guide that they could look at and point kids in the right direction. Same thing with the schools and housing developments. And again, it becomes about the kids and not about an individual program. And how do we figure out what works? It's just been trial and error, right? So the feedback from youth, and youth are usually pretty honest. They give you honest feedback. They tell you if they like it. If they don't, they tell you what's wrong with it. They tell you why they don't come back. They tell you why they don't enjoy the program. And that's really important because everybody's doing their numbers based on ADA, average daily attendance. And if you don't have kids there, if there's no participation, if there's no engagement, then that speaks volumes as well. But we want to make sure we understand why they're not there and learn from our mistakes. Why is it important to engage community advocacy? Mainly because we're trying to create buy-in, we're trying to build trust and make it about community, and we want to make sure that families are able to go and speak on their behalf. What we found locally is that the local legislators don't take it quite as serious when just the nonprofits or the service providers show up, or the school district, because they feel like it's very self-serving. It's about keeping jobs. But when we get community to come out and they see the importance of it and they're speaking for themselves, both as residents and constituents of the policymakers, it's a little bit easier to sway people to take that action. Successful strategies. So again, you can see in some of these pictures, it's really been about community-wide effort and initiatives and bringing folks together and highlighting community level. We talk about the numbers. So again, running the data and the stats and what families need to know. We share the stories, family engagement. We brought in authors. We really get people to understand literacy when they see authors that are excited to see those stories, the book giveaways. These have all been ways that we can engage parents and create buy-in and be able to then get them to advocate and show up and to speak on behalf, because it's very personal and not just about the numbers. And likewise, the partnerships with the businesses. So I apologize for the in and out. The way that we've engaged and the way that we've engaged the school district with community members and with our local legislators, because we make it about the children and the families, and we make it for them. We make it about their needs, their interests, and what they want to do.
Okay. I know there was so much good content. Does anybody have any questions for Sheryl at this point? We're going to try and figure out if we can get out a transcript for some parts that were difficult to hear. I have one question, Sheryl. What do you think prevents parents from getting involved? What do you think is one of the main barriers?
Part of it is when we do kind of talk about high level, or even when we just talk about the gaps, they feel a little bit like it might be pointing them out, right? So if they come forward and advocate, then they are either owning up to some deficiency within their parenting or within their household or within their skill set, and so they're worried about judgment, and that's why I say we really have to be careful in how we frame it, talk about engaging community. Sometimes people don't want to talk about that programs are determined by free and reduced lunch, because that means that they're having to admit that they're getting free and reduced lunch, which is based on income.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then real quick, are there any tips for engaging the media and getting them interested in covering some of these personal stories from kids and families? Have you had any success with the media?
You know, I have, but I think one of the struggles is, and I think PCY, I mean, I think your organization has done a great job over the years elevating the interest, but what we find a lot of times is that people only want the tragic stories, and so trying to figure out like what it is that we can do that highlights, and it's that media interest, and that's why again, for me, I know someone mentioned it earlier, like figuring out how you engage with elected officials because they tend to have a following, but the other piece is the more numbers speak volumes. So the more children or the more partnerships or the more organizations that you have there, the more interested people are in coming out. So figuring out how you can, you know, what's the story, what's the angle, what's the draw, and a lot of times people will be getting ready to come out, but if it's a slow news day, that's great, and they'll cover it. If you're competing with a huge news story, then you've got to have something that really pulls them out. Large numbers of children doing anything is always great, or elected officials.
Thank you very much, Sheryl. One of our participants also suggested using something like the National Lights On celebration each year to help bring in resources and media on this. So thank you, participant, for joining in. I wanted to share with you guys we've heard about a lot of effective actions that you can take in community, but I wanted to let you know about a few advocacy opportunities that are at the Capitol in Sacramento. On May 15th and 16th, you're invited to the California After School and Summer Challenge. This is the one time during the year when the expanded learning field comes together to advocate for the issues impacting our work. So this unique event includes a full day of advocacy training and networking, and then culminates with meetings with your legislators and a rally at the state capitol. And there are options if you can't make it both days. So to find more information and register, you can go to calsac.org to find out. Additionally, we need voices like yours in the Capitol before our big advocacy day in May. Our bill and budget request will be heard in several committees in April and May, and we need after-school providers to stand up during public comment and share their support. So these are the dates and times of the hearings. Let us know if you're interested in attending, and we can help with some brief talking points and kind of help you get the most out of that day. So a lot of you have been asking about resources. So let me show you where we can go. So this is the Save After School. This is saveafterschool.com. If you go to campaign information, you can find fact sheets and talking points, some data. We're going to be loading up that budget letter that Phillip was talking about that you can take with you on your meetings with legislators. Additionally, if you go to Take Action, this is some more information. So here's who you send those letters to. Here's when they need to be due by. Here's how you can sign the petition. There are tips for how to host a site visit, how to develop your story. And we are uploading more information and resources each week. So please check at saveafterschool.com to find some more. So we are just about out of time, but I wanted to show you at the bottom of your screen now, you have some files that you can download. Those are the letter of support templates that you can take. They're just little fill-in-the-blank letters that will take you just a couple minutes to complete that you can share and fill out. Unfortunately, each committee requires a separate letter of support, so you can click on those right now. And there's also a link up at the top right to saveafterschool.com. I want to thank you all for coming out and listening and submitting your questions. If you need assistance finding resources that were discussed today, or if you have any other ideas, please feel free to contact me. That's my email, jdietrich@partnerforchildren.org, and we'll be sending out an email with a link to the recording of this webinar today. So if you want to go back to any parts that you may have had trouble hearing or you had to step away for a second, or if you need to share it with a colleague that wasn't able to join us today. Please keep in mind that while we focus on increasing state funding for ACES programs in this webinar, these advocacy strategies can be used for just about any issue you want. They're effective with policymakers at the local, state, and federal levels. Thank you to our speakers for sharing their experience and expertise, and I appreciate all of your time and enthusiasm to all the participants who came in today to find out what you can do to help support your after-school programs. So thank you so much. We can remain on. If you guys have any additional questions, we can catch them offline. And have a great afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.